Welcome to Paint by MK. My name is Melissa Kelsey, and I'll be guiding you through this tutorial of a painting that we made live on my Facebook page. I titled it 2021 and Chill because, let's face it, 2020 had no chill, and we wanted to start our paint parties off right this year. Here are the supplies I used to recreate this piece. A complete list of the supplies and materials are in the description section, but feel free to use the brands and colors of your choice to make it your own. Always remember, especially if you're just starting out, that you don't have to break the bank and get the most expensive supplies. Student level or economy grade acrylics work just fine, and if you can find these and more colors in a set, you're winning. The same goes for brushes. As long as you have the basic flats and rounds, you're good to go. Definitely consider having a small and a large flat. And the same goes for your rounds. That way you can paint smoothly and efficiently. Make sure you have 1 or 2 cups of water to clean your brushes with during the painting. Paper towels and old rags for cleaning up spills in your brushes. And a list of other supplies are here too. But most importantly, wear old clothes. For this piece, I used a canvas size 11 by 14 inches, but you can use whatever size and shape you prefer. So we start off with a wet brush, and we loaded up the brush with titanium white. And you're going to cover about 2/3 of your canvas with the white. Because we're going to blend the black into the white to create a soft gray, make sure that the paint is not dripping wet, but wet enough so that the brush glides across it easily. So with the same brush, without cleaning it, we're just going to dip it a little bit in the black. And we're going to create an arc right on top of that damp white. That'll create the nice blend for you. Going back and forth and making sure that your brush is damp, not wet, but damp, will create the blending effect. It takes practice. Add a little more black for the corners to make them a little darker, because painting's all about building layers. Because acrylic dries a little quicker than you like for it to, sometimes you'll have to dip the tip of your brush in the water so it doesn't dry out. Now we're going to load up the brush, not cleaning it, with the black, and we're just going to lay it across the canvas, the bottom third, to create the floor. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be applied on the entire section, because we're going to take the white and add it to the black to create a darker gray. So again, dampen your brush, load up a little white, and blend it into the black. Again, the secret to blending is a damp brush. Can't stress that enough. Damp, not wet. Now take your brush and hold it horizontally and take it to the top of your floor and just glide it across to clean up your floor and make it nice and even. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it will create the straight edge that your floor needs. Again, we're just building layers of black and white with a wet brush or damp brush to create the dark gray. If your painting looks choppy, if your strokes look choppy and not smooth, again, take the damp brush with no paint and just glide it across. Now we're going to completely clean our brush because we're changing colors and we don't want the paint to dry in our brush. It'll ruin it. Also, check and see if your canvas is dry. It'll need to be for the next step. Now take your smaller flat brush and we're going to create the tub next. I decided to make my tub a bit of a purpley color, but I started off with a little orange. Play around with your paints. Mix them little by little to make the color that you want, if you don't have it already. So I've got my purple, and I'm using one of my brushes to help me make the line straight. So to make the tub, we're going to make dots, and we're going to connect our dots. So find the center and make 2 dots equidistant from the center. Then you're going to drop it down halfway on the floor area. And taking your brush and holding it vertically, you're going to drop it down and connect those dots. Easy peasy. And now take your brush and just go across and fill in your tub. I had so much paint on my brush from mixing my colors that I didn't have to go back on my palette for more. Depending on what colors you use, you may have to paint a second coat on your tub after it dries just slightly. And now take one of your rounds. And again, I had so much paint on my brush, I just dipped my round brush into my flat brush. And we're going to create the lip of the tub by painting 2 C's at the top of the tub. And then connecting the tops of the C's. Feel free to use whichever brush you're most comfortable with. Again, I have so much paint on my flat, I use my flat. But if you're more comfortable using your round because it's a bit of a tight space and you want it to be clean, feel free to do so. Again, I'm using both. Take your time. So now we're going to add a little more detail to our tub by creating a bit of a reflection. With the same brush, not cleaning it, dip it in your white and just trace the outside of your C's and paint a few lines below the lip of the tub. And go in and just gently blend in the white to soften the lines. You don't need a lot of white, and if your tub is still damp and not completely dry, it's even better. If it's completely dry, that's okay. Take a wet, clean brush and feather out the hard lines to make them softer. Barely touching it, gently pushing the paint and softening those lines. Now we're going to make the feet of our tub by making a little gray on our palette, simply mixing black and white together to get the desired shade that you want. And we're using a small round brush. Just make a small circle. Again, if your paint is still wet on the tub part, that's okay. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. And take your brush and make 3 small dots under the circle. Without cleaning our brush, we're going to take a little white, and I'm twirling it so the tip can be nice and sharp, almost like sharpening a pencil. And with the tip of the brush, trace the outer edge of the feet of your tub. We're creating a reflection. By now your brushes and your water is probably pretty murky. So here's a good time to pause, get some clean water, and make sure your brushes are nice and clean as well. Now we're going to make our person. Unless you have the color that you want your skin tone to be, you're going to have to play around and mix some paints. If your person has a darker skin tone, you'll want to start with the burnt sienna. And little by little, add yellow and red intermittently until you get the desired shade you want. If you're creating a more fair-skinned person, start with yellow and red, and then add a little white, little by little, maybe a little burnt sienna, Again, it's a lot of play that goes into creating skin tones. So this is a good time just to play around with your paints and get familiar with mixing. The key here is to play around and mix little by little. To make our person, we're going to take our round brush, and if it's a little dry or it's got a lot of paint in it, you may want to wet your brush and roll it around to create a point. And start from the center and draw a line close to the lip of the tub, curving it down to create a shoulder. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Then we're going to draw the neck right in the center of that line. Trust the process. We're making a stick person and we're going to fill them in. Now, paint the head. Try not to make it too big because you may make it bigger once we add the hair. So a small head starting out is not a problem. Now we're going to fill in our stick person. We're going to paint the sides of the neck to give it some body. Now we're going to take our round brush and glide it ever so slowly and gently to fill in the back and shoulders. If you need to switch to a smaller brush, definitely do that. And if you get some on the lip of the tub, that's okay. Now we're going to make a stick arm and hand by simply painting a line diagonal to the side and a bit of a rounded square for the hand. Now we're going to thicken the arm a bit by painting another line beside it, getting wider as we get to the lip of the tub, keeping it narrow close to the hand so that you can see the wrist. Don't overdo it, and don't be afraid to stop and step away if you need to. Now we're going to make our hair. I'm making a bit of a brown, blackish brown color. So I'm taking my dirty brush from painting my person and adding some black. And just making some curly C's for a curly head. Perfection is definitely not the goal here. If you're blending different colors and creating different lines, that'll give some great texture for hair. Now I'm taking my round brush, not cleaning it, and dipping it in my white. I want a lighter color for highlights for this hair. If you're starting out with lighter hair, such as a blonde color or a reddish orange color, dipping your brush in brown will be a better fit for you. If your paint is too wet like mine is, and you're not getting the curl pattern that you want, that's okay. Let your paint dry a bit and try it again. Again, it'll add for great texture and look a little more realistic. To show you another way you can paint hair, we're going to make a ponytail. So if you start with the bald head, just paint and cover your head with a single color of paint. From the base of the neck, I'm painting a straight line at a bit of an angle on both sides. Does not have to be perfect. Paint a little oval with a point at the bottom for the end of your ponytail. To create the braid, you're going to take your round brush, little paint on it, and paint some little small C's right up against the plait that we painted. It's okay to go slow. Small little C's on both sides. And then make sure that it's filled in. And now dipping the brush in the white paint, I'm tracing diagonal lines down the braid. The great part about acrylic paint is it dries fast and you can paint over it and start all over again, which is what I'm going to do. Don't stress if what you try doesn't work the first or 8th time. So I decided to stop right there with my braid. I'll correct a little bit of the extra lines by painting over them with black. Now I'm taking my brush and painting with the white paint a little ponytail holder for the top and the bottom. Totally optional, but feel free to exercise your artistic liberties. I wanted mine to be a little red, so I dipped my brush in red and painted accordingly. And from a distance, the braid doesn't look so bad, does it? Now we're going to paint our wine glass by taking our round brush and rolling it in the paint and creating a nice sharp point. And at the top of the hand, you're going to paint a U. And paint the top to create the lip of the glass. Make sure again that you roll the tip of your brush to create a point, and make your stem by making a short upside down T and curving the lines up to make it a little bit more realistic. And now I'm filling in my glass. Taking that same brush and not cleaning it, I'm going to give her a little glass of rosé by mixing a little red. Maybe a dark red. I put a little blue on the tip of my brush, just a little bit. Fill in the glass by painting the center of it red and leaving just a bit of a white edge. Don't be afraid to hold your brush really close down the ferrule, the metal part. It'll give you a lot more control. And your canvas should be dry now, so if you need to lean your hand against the canvas for even more control, feel free to do so. Take your time. And enjoy the process. So what we're doing now is creating a little reflection by dragging just a little bit of the white paint over the wine that we just painted. little bit of gray, adding a little bit more detail and definition to my glass. You don't have to do this, but if you're a little more advanced, or if you're not afraid to give it a little try, add a little bit of gray. And I'm just softening it up with a little white as well. Now that we have our glass in our hand, we can clean up our hand a bit. I'm just softening up some of the sharp edges so it can be a little more organic and a little more realistic. Now we're going to create some bubbles. Take a clean round brush and make sure your brush is wet before you load the paint on, because you want your paint to be a little thin for this part. And just simply make as many bubbles as you like. Different sizes. I like to start off with the larger ones and then go down to the smaller ones. Feel free to pause the video and go bubble crazy. We've gone from circles to dots. And now we're going to create a bit of reflection in our bubble by making a bit of gray. So taking that brush still loaded with white paint, mix in a bit of black to create a gray. And just gently color one side of your bubble with little C-shaped strokes. And I think it looks better with just the larger bubbles and some of the medium-sized bubbles. I left the smaller ones alone. Well, some of them. Now I'm taking my brush with a little bit of white and going over my gray to soften it up a bit. You can also do this with a clean, damp brush as well to thin out the gray paint and soften the edges. Take your time, and again, trust and enjoy the process. Also, don't be afraid to step away from the canvas and give yourself a break. Now I'm creating a bit of a shadow on the floor. This is totally optional. But the same way we made our bubbles, take a wet brush, add a little bit of black paint, and gently brush the paint over the floor. No particular shape. Just a bit of a understood blob that this is a shadow. A little more area for detail. I added a little bit of white paint to the shoulder of my lady and her upper arm, just to give her a little highlight. A little more extra I did for this one. I added a little vine by taking my grass green, mixed it with a little white, and just created a squiggly line for the vine. Added a little white for detail and depth. And added a few leaves. Just made a bit of a teardrop and filled it in. Again, I'm using my round brush, and a really good idea if you want to try this to use a small round brush. Adding a little white for detail and depth. Just touching the edges of the vine and a little bit of the leaf. And now with a clean brush, I'm just adding some white dots for pearls. I know some sorority ladies who would love this. Some of my pearls are a little fat, so I cleaned my brush and added some green and separated my pearls, recreating their shape so you can actually see them. This would also look really nice with daisies, pansies, any kind of flower. I'm going another extra step and making a little table, playing around with my browns, my blacks, my whites. And making a filled-in oval for the top. Straight lines for the legs. And again, just playing around with layers, thin layers. And then a little light for highlight once I got my shape down. I softened the hard lines with a bit of a damp wet brush. And for the wine bottle, I mixed some gray and started out with a rectangle and filled it in. Next, added a bit of a round top to the rectangle to continue the bottle shape. For the neck of the bottle, just a short straight line. A little longer. And for the lip of the opening, short horizontal line. Give it a little time to dry, and then paint your beverage inside the bottle. Again, mixing the same color that you mixed for the wine glass and painting the inside of the bottle. Making sure to leave a bit of an edge between the beverage and the bottle to make it as realistic as possible that this is inside the glass. Adding a little extra and painting a little reflection at the top of the wine. Again, just a little more detail for some added realism. And now with the clean brush, I added a little white, made sure the tip was sharp, and just ever so gently and ever so carefully traced a white line along the edge of the bottle, creating a reflection. I did a little on both sides. And voila, I am done. So always sign your paintings. I hope you enjoyed this super chill, super simple painting. I hope you took artistic liberty and added some of your own embellishments and details and made it your own like I did. Did you paint along with us? Please make sure that you tag us on social media. We're so glad you joined us, and make sure you subscribe, follow, like, and join us live or for the YouTube replays. I hope this made a difference in your day, and we'll see you again soon.